and it is my distinct pleasure to be talking to you today. So my background, a little bit about me, starting with my education. So originally I was going to be a psychologist. That was what I set forth to do when I graduated from high school, but life happened. And 2 years into it, I had to leave school. And then life happened again, and I realized that I really needed to do something more. So I took out a loan, went back to school to community college and got an associate degree in business. And my first job out of school was in the business office of a nursing home, which was a very busy, very interesting position. And I did that for several years. And one of the senior leaders that worked there approached me one day and said that they would pay for me to go back to school if I wanted to continue and get my full 4-year degree. And at the time where I lived, there were no 4 years of school. So he introduced me to what was the very early stages of which it's now online learning. They called it external degree programs back then. And it was quite a long time ago. So I actually got boxes of real books, and I studied that way. Nothing was online. And I had to secure a proctor who would watch me take all of my tests and send them back into the school for me. But I did ultimately get my degree from Western Illinois University, a 4-year degree in business. So I left there and I moved to another company, oddly enough, that made needlecraft kits. And I worked my way through and became a director of product development for that company. And it was a great job, but then my husband he got a job down here. Back then I lived in northeastern Pennsylvania. He got a job down here, so I followed him without a job myself. So I moved down here outside of Philadelphia with no job, no contacts. I didn't know anybody. Again, this was pre-internet days, so I did my best to try to find a job. And I did what you did at the time. You went to you answered ads in the newspaper. You took actual physical paper resumes and you mailed them to companies unsolicited. And you crossed your fingers and you hoped for the best. And weeks and weeks went by and nothing happened. I didn't get a single bite. Nobody had any interest. So I reached back out to my prior company and just to talk to somebody and ask advice, ask guidance. And I said, I'm really frustrated. Nobody's interested in me. I wanted to pivot out of needlecrafts because I felt like that was an industry that was sort of dying. So I wanted to do something more progressive. Didn't know what that was being very open. And he suggested that I sign up for a temp agency and become a temp. So I wasn't really crazy about that idea. I had been a director at my old job, and I was like, I don't know that I want to do that. And he said, hear me out. Couple things to think about. It will get you out of the apartment because you're clearly going a little crazy, not having anything to do. It'll help your skills. It'll give you a lay of the land. You'll get to know the area, the companies. And then, worst case scenario, the worst thing that's going to happen is it gives you some money. So I signed up for an agency and I talked to them and I said, I'm really looking for a big company where I can get my foot in the door. I want to be in something progressive, like maybe IT or pharmaceuticals or something like that. And they did their best, but they only had so much to work with. So there were some jobs where I literally was, alphabetizing for an entire week. One of the jobs was they said, could you please help out? We had somebody cancel from a job that was just a receptionist at this teeny tiny little company. They didn't even know what they did. They said, but it's last minute. We need somebody in there. Please, we will be forever in your debt. If you could please just fill in for us, we'll get you out of there as soon as we possibly can. So I said I would do it. And I went. And I was there for less than a day when I realized that company was actually Cisco Systems, a huge global multi-billion-dollar IT company. And this was just one teeny tiny local office. So true to their word, they got me out of there. And I was saying my goodbyes, walking around. And one of the senior leaders there pulled me into his office and said, listen, we have this job that isn't even posted yet. It's not fully baked, but we think you might be good for it. If you would be willing to stay in a temporary capacity for a little bit longer, give us some time. We'd like you to interview for it. So I did. I interviewed, I got the job, and I was actually there for a full 20 years. After that, I moved to, and I was in sales operations, sales enablement, marketing operations, progressing through until I was a senior manager when I left. Then I went to a small local SaaS software company where I was a director of sales operations and enablement. And then after that, I went back to big corporate. My last job was at VMware. I was the director of sales enablement for North and South America. So I had a small team underneath me, but I realized the big corporate thing really wasn't where my heart was anymore. And I decided to pivot again and try to do something that was more about giving back. And so I'm still exploring all the opportunities that are out there for me, but that's one of the reasons why I'm here today. So all that corporate experience, has really, really was valuable to me. But the lessons I think out of all of this are a couple. A, don't be afraid to ask for help. Ask for help, ask for guidance, ask for mentoring. Don't be shy about that. Don't be surprised where opportunities come up. It may not seem like a great opportunity at the time, but at least, give it the benefit of the doubt, explore it. It might be something completely different than what you thought it was. And get yourself out there. To do your best to talk to people, make people aware that you're looking, and try to, socialize as much as you possibly can. So, positive attitude. I think positive attitude, in my opinion, in my experience, has been the foundation of job searches and actually beyond the job search, the actual work itself. And I know sometimes positive attitude is not easy. So for me, again, this is my personal thing, and I know all of this is not going to resonate with everybody, and that's okay. I'm just relaying to you some things that have worked for me. So some things may resonate with you and you may want to try them. Some things just may not be of interest, and I get that. But from a positive attitude standpoint, affirmations have really helped me. And what I mean by affirmations are, repeating to yourself the sorts of things that uplift you. So in the morning, brushing your teeth, taking your shower, doing your hair, repeating things like, today's going to be a good day. I feel really good about today. If you are in a job interview situation, and you're looking for a job, repeating to yourself, I've got this. I can do this. I'm a great candidate. Any company would be lucky to have me. Because if you have that soundtrack in the back of your head of, nobody's going to want to hire me. There's so many more people that are more qualified than me. They've got more education than me, more experience. I know I'm not going to get anything, but I'll try. Then that's going to come out in everything you do. It's going to come out in the networking you do. When you get an interview, it's going to come out in the interview process. So I really have found that at trying to have these affirmations, some people even write things and put them on stickies on their mirrors so they see them, in the mirror in the bathroom, in their car, those sorts of things, to constantly have that positive reminder. And there's lots of YouTube things out there that you can listen to that are really helpful. I also think exercise helps for a positive attitude. And I'm not talking about getting a big expensive gym membership. And many of you may exercise now, and that's great. But even just something like taking a walk, or, again, back to YouTube. There are so many YouTube videos out there that are 5, 10, 15, 20 minutes of just getting your blood going. You don't need any equipment. You don't need any clothing that's special. You just need a little bit of time and a little bit of space. And you don't have to do it every day, but just get those endorphins going and just to help. And I feel like when I first moved down here and I wasn't finding anything, one of the things that helped me was getting out and exercising, because I was becoming very insular and really kind of dragging my own self down. And I felt like exercising really was a help to me. Again, some of these things may resonate with you, some of them may not. I understand that. I'm relaying the things that worked for me. So in your search, everybody's going to tell you the same thing. Your resume is the foundation of it. It needs to be accurate. It needs to be pristine, meaning you need to have everything spell checked, perfectly spell checked. All the font needs to be the same type of font, the same size as appropriate. Things need to be lined up. And brevity is actually preferred than putting everything down. Short and sweet. There's lots of examples of good things out there. You don't need to hire anybody. There's lots of good things you can look for on the internet. LinkedIn, I'm sure you're probably all aware of it, but just in case. LinkedIn is a really great tool. It's an online website that you go in, and similar to your resume, you put your experience, you put your education, you put all of that stuff in there. And it's, the baseline is completely free of charge. You don't have to pay for it. You enter all your own stuff. It's very similar to your resume, like I said. If you did want, you could do a trial, a 30-day trial of the higher level one. But you just have to be very, very careful that you cancel it before that 30 days is up, because then you will get charged for it. But that'll give you a sample of a little bit extra functionality. But LinkedIn is a really great tool. You can research companies, you can reach out to other people and use it as a great networking tool. It's really a good foundation for your job search. The other website I really like to use is Glassdoor. And I don't know if you're aware of it. A lot of people, I'm surprised, are not. The best thing about Glassdoor is it gives reviews from folks that have actually worked in these companies. And now sometimes you're going to get some not pleasant reviews, because think about it like anything else, whether it's a restaurant or a store, angry people yell louder than happy people. So you have to take it with a grain of salt, bear that in mind. But if you see a company that all the reviews are bad, it's pretty telling, right? And you may see some companies where all the reviews are great, and that's telling as well. And one of the things about Glassdoor is what they enter, companies can't go back and say, oh, take that down, I don't like that. It's there. So they're relatively candid. There's also information about the companies out there, about their benefits, about how the actual interview process went for other people. So it's a really great resource. Again, it's completely free. You can create your own account. There's an app like there is anything else. But I used it a lot when I was looking for companies, because it really gives you kind of the inside scoop of what the company's like. Network, in person. I joined a small little networking group when I was looking, and it was really helpful. I'm actually still there today, even though I'm not looking anymore. But like, don't be afraid. Don't be shy to tell people. I know people somehow feel sometimes a little hesitant, even maybe embarrassed that they're looking for a job, and there's no reason to. I found that people really do want to help. They can't help if they don't know that you're looking. So, be very upfront about it. I think it'll benefit you greatly. And then skills. So I know you probably all have a lot of stuff going on, and you're trying to juggle everything at once. But during this time, if you are looking for a position and you feel like maybe there are some skills that you could brush up on a little bit, again, there's lots of YouTube things out there that are really, really good, especially on different types of computer skills. And also back to that LinkedIn, that second level of access, if you do that 30-day free trial, you can get their LinkedIn Learning, and there's lots of stuff that's really, really good out there, and it's in a really good, easy to use format. So interview prep. So now you've got an interview. That's awesome. The first thing I do is I research the company. So back to LinkedIn, you can use LinkedIn, you can use Glassdoor. If it's a publicly traded company, you can use things like Yahoo Finance, because it'll tell you the health of the company, the financial health of the company. There's lots of good things out there to help you research the company, but it's really good to go into your interview having some foundational knowledge. I have interviewed hundreds and hundreds of people, either for positions that I was hiring for or as part of an interview team for other positions. And I was really candidly surprised how many people would come in and say, can you tell me about the company? I don't know anything about your company. In today's day and age, with internet out there, whether it's your own access, or you're going, somewhere else for it, do your best to try and do, and you don't have to know exhaustive amounts, but just foundationally, basically, what do they do? Who are their competitors? Basically things like that. How large are they? How many employees do they have? All this stuff is available online to search for. Obviously, plan your outfit. This is just for success. It's really important to, dress the part. So can't emphasize that enough. Prepare for your interview questions. You're going to be getting a list of resources as part of this. And one of the things that I put out there is where you can find sample interview questions. So, look them over. You can kind of get a gauge of which ones might be more appropriate for the position that you're interviewing for. But just kind of make sure you kind of think about how you would answer those questions before you even get into the interview. So you kind of are a little prepped for it. I think it gives you confidence walking in to have done that just in your head. Prepare your own questions. I can't tell you how many times I have been interviewing people and said, so what questions do you have? And they say nothing. You should have some questions. Now, what you don't want to ask in the first interview is, you don't want to ask about salary. You don't want to ask about benefits. You don't want to ask about work-life balance. But you do want to ask things like, what is your ideal candidate for this position? What is the biggest obstacle you think the person that gets hired will have in the next 6 months? Things like that are very specific to the position itself, not the overall kind of company kind of things. So just trying to get an idea of your fit for that role. Try to do a dry run. Partner with somebody. It doesn't have to be heavy lifting on your part, but just ask somebody. Take some of those interview questions that I mentioned just 2 dots above, and give them to somebody, and kind of go back and forth. And again, it gets the kinks out, and it will give you a little more comfort when you're walking in my experience and in my opinion. So during the interview, now we're in that weird COVID, Zoom, maybe in person, probably not in person kind of thing, but be early. If it's in person, be early, like 10 minutes early. If it's Zoom, make sure that when they click into it, you're there waiting. They're not waiting for you. If it's in person, bring a copy of your resume, even though they've been sent it before. I usually have a binder that I bring, like a folio, that I stick a copy of my resume in. On the off chance that they want it, I've got it. I also use that. I have a tablet in there with a pen so that I can take notes. And then I also write down the questions that I had prepared, as I talked about in the last slide, with space so that I can write out the answers. But I would always bring a copy of your resume if we go back to in-person things. I hope we will at some point in time. Take notes, take copious notes. You think you're going to remember things. The information probably, once you walk out of there, some of it you're going to remember, some of it you're not. It actually is a good sign. Like, interviewers like to see people taking notes. They like to see that there's that level of interest and that level of engagement. So don't be shy about taking notes. Body language, posture, and eye contact are very important. I know this seems fundamental, but I have to mention it because I have interviewed people for VP level positions that have sat in the chair like this while they're being interviewed, like they're so bored. They want to be anyplace else but there, and it doesn't send a good message. So I have to mention it to, make sure that you're sitting up straight, you're making eye contact with the interviewer. I had one person that literally the entire interview did not look at me at all. They looked everywhere else. They looked to the side, the left, up, but didn't look at me. It was very disconcerting, and needless to say, they did not get the job. And be engaged. I, again, hate to mention this part, but I've seen it happen. Do not look at your phone. I've actually had people who have checked their the time they've checked their messages while they're in the interview. Can't, first of all, it's rude. Um, but it just, if you've got something super important, like maybe you're waiting to hear from somebody, just mention it. Like, I'm very sorry, but I might get a text from my daughter. She is in a doctor's appointment right now. We're waiting for results on something. It's super important if you don't mind. Anybody would understand that. But just in general, turn it off and put it away. And ask your questions. Don't forget to ask your questions. It really kind of shows that you're engaged, you're interested, you're aligned. And you know, it's a great opportunity to pull out of them things that they have not mentioned as part of the interview previously. And then next steps, it's kind of like closing on a sale. Ask the next steps. And it simply is, you know, when can I expect to hear something? What types of things would happen? Should I be selected? What are some other things? It gives them the opportunity to kind of give you an idea of when you might hear from them. So for example, they may be super, super motivated to fill this position, and you might hear about them. They may say, you're going to hear by the end of the week. Or it may be a situation where one of the decision makers, the ultimate decision makers in HR or higher up the food chain, is on vacation and they're not going to be back for 2 weeks. So they may say, you know what, this person has to weigh in. We can't do anything until they're part of the process. So it's probably going to be at least 2 to 3 weeks before you hear back. At least it sets some sort of bar so you know. But I always try to ask next steps. Interview follow-up. So you've had the interview. Within 24 hours, send an email, thank you. It doesn't have to be long. Short and sweet is actually preferred. Thank you for your time. I enjoyed our conversation. I feel like I feel like the experience you're looking for in this sales support person is complementary to what I did at X, Y, and Z, that type of thing. If you don't have the email address of the person, reach back out to HR. They expect these kind of things. They're not surprised by it. They'd be happy to give you the email, or they'll give you their email and they'll forward the email on to the person. Critique yourself after you're done, but don't be judgy. Just think about, oh, I wish I had done this differently. Next time I'll probably ask this question, but don't beat yourself up. It's not going to do you any good. It's actually counterproductive to my positivity message of earlier on. So, kind of give yourself an honest assessment of how you did. Do better next time if you need to, but don't be judgy. Be patient. Sometimes even if they say, you'll hear from us in 2 weeks, it takes a bit longer. If it's several weeks, it's appropriate to reach back out to HR for a status update, but sometimes these things take a lot longer than they really thought they were going to. And it's not a reflection on you, it's a reflection on their internal operations. And don't get discouraged. If this interview doesn't work and you'll have other ones, just try to keep that positive attitude. So congratulations, in this scenario, you got the job. So now what? Right? Be sure you complete all of the onboarding stuff on time. The greatest likelihood, it's all going to be online. And some of it, yes, can be very labor intensive and picky. And if you're having trouble with it, if there's areas you're struggling with, again, reach back out to HR. I'm sure they're happy to help. But if they have to wait for your onboarding stuff, they will communicate that to your new manager, and you don't want to start off on that kind of foot. So make sure you've got everything back on time and as comprehensive as you can possibly make it. When you start, ask questions. I know people sometimes tend to think that they were hired for this position, so they should have some sort of epiphany of automatically knowing how to do the job. That's not the case. Very few companies have very super comprehensive training when you come in the door of how to do that job, right? It's very, very rare. They may give you an overarching, this is our methodology, this is our company motto, this is what we stand for, give you, information on the executives, the history of the company, but physically how to do your job is going to probably be a different type of training. So ask questions, do not be shy, and take notes. Again, take notes, write everything down. Very few companies, again, will have a manual that they give you. Most everything is going to be word of mouth, shadowing, watching things. So taking notes can be critically important. I had do more than is asked. And again, this is something that personally for me has helped me. It's something that I try to think of proactively. So for example, if I'm asked to complete something by Friday, and it's totally doable to do it by Thursday, I'm not breaking a sweat. I can get it done. I will do it by Thursday, and I will submit it by Thursday, and then I will explain that I actually was able to get it done a little faster than I anticipated, so I have it to you early. It shows initiative. It shows that you really are, committed and really, really want to do a good job. So I know sometimes people hesitate. Well, they told me it wasn't due till Friday. Maybe if I hand it in a little early, it'll be a problem. I think it really is more of a positive than a negative. Take any training and enrichment that's offered. So, many times coming into a company, there are things online that you can do, you can watch. They may offer you, the small little SaaS software company that I had, they would have small college courses that were offered. You could sign up for them completely free of charge. And it was, everything from advanced Excel skills to doing, introductory to analytics. And it was completely optional, but it was things like that. Obviously, if it's relevant to your job. I found that a lot of people hesitated to take them because they felt like it showed that they were not as qualified for their jobs as they felt they should be. But I really don't think that it ever shows that. I think it shows that you've got initiative and you are eager and willing to learn as much as you can. And be kind to yourself. By that I mean you are coming into a new job. Even if you've been working for years and years, it's a new job. And you're not going to learn things overnight. They say the typical learning curve is at least 6 months. In some cases, 9 months to a year. And people tend to beat themselves up because they haven't learned things faster or they haven't caught on faster. But you really are like a sponge. You can only, a sponge can only hold so much liquid. And then the rest of it. So you need to kind of let things sink in and then absorb more. And I've just seen it over and over again where people tend to get anxious and nervous and feel like, oh, I should be so much farther along. I should know so much more. Give yourself a break, take a deep breath, think positively. You're going to be great. So, any questions?
We do have one from Maria. She wrote, should an interview be more like a conversation? Is it okay for it to be like a conversation?
So it's really situational. And a lot of it's dictated by the company, right? It's dictated by how they do their interview style. So I've had interviews that were panel interviews that were 6 people and myself. And they all went around and they kind of had their own questions. And it was very, candidly, it was very stressful. They all had their own different styles, and they were all coming at it from their departments. So there was somebody from customer success, there was somebody from finance, there was somebody from HR, there was somebody from the sales organization. So they all had their own level of interest. My personal interview style is more conversational. I don't like to try to make people upset and nervous and scared. I like to actually get a feeling of who the people really are, and get a sense of, how they feel about their role and that sort of thing. I tend to ask more conversational questions, but everybody's, interview style is different. I've seen, and I think it's more rare these days. I think there's more sensitivity to people kind of acting like bullies. But I have seen people that have an interview style where they're very edgy, and it's really like they're almost trying to make the person feel bad. Um, but I think that's kind of waning. And I think HR departments are really putting the kibosh to anybody that are trying to do things like that with that style. I think it's a bit, not even old school, but old school. Did that help?
I think so, right, Maria? We have another one. Kelly wants to know, how soon should people follow up with the employer after submitting a job application? And what should I say on my follow-up email?
So, I would follow up. It depends on the role. The higher level of the role, I think sometimes the longer it takes to process these things. A general rule of thumb that I've heard is, if you don't hear from something in like 2 weeks, then follow up and just be very positive about it. Reinforce that you're extremely interested in the position, that you think it sounds like it would be a really good opportunity for you, and that, you were just wondering if you could be given a status of when things might progress. You don't ever want to come across negative or pushy, like, why haven't I heard from you? You always kind of want to keep that like enthusiasm, like, I'm so excited about this position. It sounds perfect for me. It's exactly what I'm looking for. And I really would, was just wondering when I might hear something or what the status is, and keep it upbeat.
Okay, Natigna wants to know, she says, one of my biggest fears is choosing the wrong company and being unhappy there. What are some red flags to look out for when being interviewed? Because when interviewing them just as much. Oh yeah, because we're interviewing them just as much. So what would be a red flag when a company is interviewing you?
I think there's probably several. Well, first of all, I would go back to Glassdoor, and I would absolutely positively use Glassdoor. And don't just use the last few um, reviews. Like, go down a couple, and they typically a lot of times will share what their position is, so you kind of get a sense if they're talking about the same part of the company that you'd be joining. But I try to ask them questions like that question I mentioned before. It's like, what's your ideal candidate? A red flag would be if they came back and said, well, we're looking for somebody who is extremely hardworking and, is all about the job. Or, we're looking for somebody who will, just be, focus on work. And that's going to probably tell you that there is no work-life balance in that job, right? And I think especially these days, that's a big red flag for anybody. Even, if you are single and unattached and have no children, you want work-life balance. You don't want to literally be living for your job. I think, if there is, benefits are a big thing, in my opinion. So you're not going to talk about benefits in the first interview, but in a subsequent interview, you will hear about benefits. So if there are very few vacation days, if there are very few holidays, things of that nature, for me, I think are big red flags, because it speaks to really how the company feels about, in my opinion, about their employees. If they're only giving, there are some companies that maybe give like 5 days vacation, things like that. So also too, just, use your spidey senses. If you're interviewing with the hiring manager, really kind of use your gut to say, is this somebody I feel like I want to work for? Do they feel like somebody that I can learn from, I can be guided by, that I can partner with? All of those things. Um, I think, kind of really letting your gut kind of give you that insight as to, is this somebody, and you're perfectly right. You're interviewing them, they're interviewing you. When I interview, I, candidly, I can tell in the first few minutes if I think the person is somebody that would be good on my team. Because I'm not just looking at somebody to hire somebody that I want to work with. I'm looking to hire somebody that is going to work well with everybody else that I've got on my team. So, kind of just going with your gut on that. Did that help? Again, feel free to like double click into my answers if it's not hitting the mark for you. I'm happy to go deeper or pivot and go different.
Awesome. Maria wants to know, how do you deal with a career pivot after an absence from working?
So if you can, depending on the position, obviously, one of the things, like I said, if you need to bone up on your skills in a certain area, I would do what I can to make available free resources, that sort of thing. Think of things that maybe you have done even when you have had a gap. Is there things that you've done from a volunteer perspective, things that you've done with a school, those types of things? Sometimes you don't feel that they are relevant, but they can be. Another thing is, if there is, other people who are, that are in that similar type of position, pick their brains, have a conversation with them and try to get a sense of, what their role is like, what they are. So you can, as you're presenting yourself, you can hit on things yourself that are complementary to what that role is about.
We also have Natigna says, any examples of unique or creative ways someone made a lasting impression on you? I hear doing more than just a thank you email without kissing up to an interviewer can help.
And again, that can be situational. I think a thank you email is definitely, like I said, that's table stakes. You have to do that. And in that email, like highlight the things that you feel, call back to that interview. That's why taking notes is so important, right? Think back on the things you did, make that email short and sweet, but call out points and very specific things maybe the interviewer said that resonated with you, that you thought was really, really good. But I would be careful not to go too far, because in some cases, depending on the approach, it can be off-putting to the interviewer, especially if they're interviewing a lot of people. It may backfire. So if you had examples of things that you had heard of that were like a little bit more than a thank you, I'd be curious as to what those examples would be. I would think, though, like doing anything tangible, like sending something, it might not have the desired effect.
Maria says, can we get samples of a thank you email?
I believe in the resource thing that I did, there is a link to some examples of thank you emails. Yes. If not, if I didn't do that, I will send it on again, and I will make sure to add that, and we'll get that out to you.
Awesome. So what I'll do is, just to follow up, I'll send everyone a thank you email for joining us today. And then I'll include you on it, Jane, just so you could be on it. I'll share the resource sheet that you sent me for everyone to have. And then are you okay if like if they have any questions to reach out back to you or?
Yes, absolutely.
Okay, so I'll do that. And then we also got, I know that we had an event with Barclays not that long ago. And then everyone who participated, one of the ladies that actually hosted the event, she shared her actual thank you letter when she got accepted to Barclays. So maybe I'll share that as well because she was okay with us sharing it.
Okay.
So I'll send that, I'll include that with that attachment.
Sounds good.
Anyone else has any questions or concerns or, oh, go ahead, Karen. No problem.
Okay, I want to ask this verbally because I couldn't figure out how to write it. We had another one of these wonderful meetings, and they were going over like, tell me about yourself. And one of the questions was, I'm not 100% sure of the question anymore, but it's like, what is your weakest trait or something like that that they use? Is that right? I was wondering.
Typically, yeah, that's.
Is that correct? Okay. I was just curious if you could give us some advice on that.
On that particular one?
Yeah, like what, I'm not sure how to ask it. That's why I'm asking on the video.
Yeah, so I have gotten that. My answer on what's my weakest trait.
Yes, thank you.
Okay. This is my answer, but my answer is I sometimes tend to lean toward perfectionism when I should be, from a work perspective, perfectionism when it really is good enough. So I'll redo it and redo it and redo it and redo it, even though it was perfectly fine. I obsess over it and then I spend so much time. So that's usually the example I give, that I have to pull myself back from trying to make everything 100% absolutely perfect, and for the sake of time management and all of that. That's the example that I give. But I bet if you Google how to answer that question,
Oh, okay.
I bet you will get some really awesome answers.
Oh, okay. Didn't think of that. Okay.
Because there's a lot of forums out there where, and I could probably have sent you a resource list that would be a book. There's a lot of forums out there for people that will ask questions like that, and then you get to see like all the kind of answers that they did.
All right, thank you.
You're welcome.
Anyone else has any questions or concerns? Okay, Maria says, thank you very much, Jane. She will thank you, Jane, on the chat.
You guys are all very welcome. Again, just to reiterate, when the email comes out, my email will be on it. If you have any additional questions, if there's anything you're thinking of, if something doesn't make sense once you see it on that resource list, please don't hesitate to reach out. I'm certainly happy to help in any way that I can. So this is not, I'm happy even 3-4 weeks from now, if you're looking at this and something comes up, don't hesitate. Happy to help.
Jane, just to confirm, the one that you sent me today, that's the one that I'm going to attach when okay.
Yes, I added one thing to it called it's like God Fairy Boss or God Boss Fairy, and there was a particular article in it that I found interesting. That was what interviewers say when they're interviewing. These things make them want to hire that candidate. So I found it to be